Welcome to a very exciting edition of Rebellion's educational series. We have one of my favorite Wall Street Journal reporters with us, Ali Wolfe, who actually just resigned to join the board of Palantir. Very cool, Ali. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. So, from reading your work over the last few years, I can see your passion for New York City is just manifest throughout so many of your articles. How do you feel about the current state of New York right now?
Well, when I'm in the city now, I feel a little bit saddened, to be honest, a bit scared sometimes. So I got this app. I don't know if you use this app called Citizen. It's fabulous. Everywhere I walk in the city, I open the Citizen app, and it tells me when there's been a shooting or a knifing or a stabbing. And my husband thinks I'm crazy because it gives you everything that's been reported, anywhere where you're walking. So it does, that scares me a little bit, but I do sort of feel very strongly about the power of New York in general to rebound. I mean, everybody said this around 9/11. I'm sure everybody said it in the 70s, though I wasn't born, thankfully. And but now I think I just think it just has this. Everybody sort of can badmouth New York as much as they want, but it always rises again. And I think people will, whenever there's a vaccine and people feel safe again, they'll come back to the city and go to the restaurants and go to the theaters and come back to whatever they thought it was that made it great.
Yeah, I mean, as a Buckley boy of the '80s, I grew
Yeah,
up with call girls on 57th Street below the
right.
pink Cadillac of Hard Rock. Do you remember the Cadillac that was the awning for the Hard Rock Cafe?
Oh yeah, of
Yes.
course.
But back in the '80s, that's where ladies of the night would flock, and so New York has come a long way, and being mugged was something we were conscious of every day after school, and I kind of always felt the last few years with such a safe New York that we would, I hate to see such a recidivist action, but the human tendency is to go backwards, and we have kind of gone backwards here, sadly, with COVID.
It
Right.
does feel that way because I remember also in high school that there were these gangs, and our one of the teachers was biking down Park Avenue, and she got slashed in the face because part of the gang initiation was to slash somebody. And so
Yes,
the
I remember that
poor
as well.
teacher biking home, had this gash in her face like that, and it's so easy to forget, like you say, because the last couple of years have been so safe, and you can go to the park at any hour. But it does feel like that's a little beginning to change, at least for now.
No, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I told her I don't want her in the subway anymore. I think that it's gotten to a level of danger I'd rather her avoid. And
Yeah, I agree with you. It definitely makes sense. There's near our house. There's a I don't know if you read about these hotels
yes,
that
of course.
yeah. So they're right near us, and they say apparently there are all these sex offenders who are just staying in the hotels and now it's sort of sleeping out
Yes,
on the street.
all
I
sorts
haven't.
of homeless sex offenders are staying in hotels near
Yeah,
multi-million-dollar Upper West Side apartments. It's absolutely insane, and it's bringing crime right to the Upper West Side, and it's causing a flight outside of the city that has not been seen in something like 60, 70 years.
well,
4% of
that's
apartments are available now.
sorry.
4% of New York City apartments are
Oh,
available.
that's amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge. Because also I remember last, if you were to say that there would be a rush on Connecticut, a couple months ago, people would say, oh, you're crazy because
Yes.
you couldn't get rid of a house couldn't give away a house in Connecticut. And now those prices are going way up, it sounds like.
They
I mean,
are indeed.
Connecticut's looking pretty good.
Yes. No, no, no. They are indeed. So do you think New York will recover? Do you have an idea on the time frame?
I think it will. I mean, I just think people want to be where it's happening, and right now it's not happening in New York. But as soon as it's safe again, as soon as a vaccine becomes more available or available at all, I think people will go back because I think people really miss being in their office. They miss that feeling of being in Midtown and being amid all the energy, seeing friends, and the convenience of New York is
The
really
life
unlike the
choices, the
city.
convenience of New York is unique. And if I lived 2,000 years ago, I would have to live in Rome. And so today, as long as New York is the Rome of the present day, I personally have to live here. But we'll see how things evolve. I hope,
Are
and
you in
I
New York
believe in New
now?
York.
Are you outside of the city or in the
Oh no,
city?
I'm on 54th Street right now.
Oh wow, good for you. So there you go.
We're recording from
You're,
Midtown here, so no, I come to work actually. Rebellion is also as a money manager, we're an essential service actually. So
Oh, great.
Fortunate enough to be able to come to work throughout this epidemic. So, speaking of history, your father, Tom Wolfe, one of the greatest writers in U.S. history, one of my personal favorites. In fact, I remember when I was flying to Telluride as a 15-year-old, I read A Man in Full so quickly. It was A Man in Full and Harry Potter 4, The Goblet of Fire were the two books I read the fastest in my entire life. I found those stories the most intriguing. But number 3 was The Right Stuff. And so
I love that.
when will you write the sequel to The Right Stuff for the current space race? Because of your unique place as a Wall Street Journal reporter and your fantastic book,
Former Wall
Valley
Street
of the
Journal
Gods.
reporter.
Oh, I apologize. Of course, it was a week ago. Just a week
It
ago.
was very recent. It was very recent. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just a week ago, of course, you resigned to join that amazing company, Palantir. So it's still, you know, you've been, in my mind, you're still a Wall Street Journal reporter.
Thank you. My mind too.
I think, you know, I think The Right Stuff too must be written. I think you're the only one to do it, and I think you're uniquely positioned to do it as well. It'd be such a fantastic story, and there are just so many interesting players, and I who wouldn't want to read that? And so, you know, at this time, there's a lack of great content, and so I hope you will. You know, so have you seen SpaceX much? Do you have an opinion on them? Have you covered them at all?
A little bit, but I mean, I wrote this book called Valley of the Gods, and
Yes, sorry, let's go to Valley of the Gods. Let's talk about that.
Well, I wrote about some of those entrepreneurs who are paving the way, the new way in space, and it's interesting about The Right Stuff. You're the first person who's given me this fantastic idea to write a second space race book, and it does seem like
you could probably do a series. There's so much content currently.
Yeah, I would love it. That's a great idea. The funny thing is that my father, it would be a different book, because when my father went to go write The Right Stuff, he was covering a space launch at Cape Canaveral, and then he came up with the idea to make this into a book. And what really drew him to the idea was this idea that the astronauts who they were choosing at the time were so much like him in terms of their background. You know, they sort of came from these middle class sort of suburban homes, and they were real Boy Scouts, you know, and they had this sort of similar upbringing as he did. And he was from the South, and I think some of them were from the South. And so he thought, you know, how could it fascinated him that these people who were like him could go on to be these larger than life heroes. And he wanted to know, you know, what was it about these men who had a similar background than him could manage this feat. You know, I mean, they had the right stuff, you know, that my father wrote about. And now I mean, I have no similarity to Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or you know, Richard Branson or any of these people, but I mean, I look up to them quite a bit, but it's like these Tony Stark characters in a way. You know,
there definitely are more characters, you know, that are very Tony Stark-esque. 100%, I agree with you. It's definitely, it's a different world, but the world evolves. That's just what, you know, what we live in. Like New York, you know, New York's never the same. As kids, we knew Rusty's in 73rd Street, which then DJs, and you know, the evolution, you know, never ceases to amaze you how quickly it evolves on us. And so
it's really interesting.
It's a different space race today than it was in the 60s. But for me, The Right Stuff was such a perfect piece of art because it took what seemed like the impossible dream, and it brought it to us, you know, simplistic people, and let us have a little vision into, you know, one of the most amazing feats in U.S., you know, history. And what's going on now, it's a whole, you know, this is space race too, and it's very exciting, and I think it's definitely captivating global audience. I can't imagine any country that isn't excited about it. So anyway, sorry to pester you with such an idea, but I think it would be an amazing.
No, I love that idea, because
I really hope you consider it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wrote a story for the Wall Street Journal a couple of years ago about space travel, space tourism, and so I went out to the Mojave Desert and interviewed Richard Branson and looked at their whole, I think it was Virgin Galactic, and they had this huge spaceship, and we went into the spaceship, and they had these simulations, and the astronauts would, you know, show us around the new one that they were building, and we saw Richard Branson going up in the plane and doing all these tricks. And then I met a bunch of these these citizens that had signed up to go on the first Virgin Galactic flight. And then I got back, I said, oh, this is so fascinating. And then 2 weeks later, do you remember this? It crashed. The
I remember that. That was
spaceship blew up, and two of the test pilots died, I think. And then, but I think now they're working on it again. But it was amazing how close they were. I think in their program, you would go up and you'd really spend like a very short time in actual space. Like you sort of would do this trip up, and then you'd be sort of weightless for a little bit and then come back down. But that in itself is so much progress. It'd just be so interesting to follow that up and learn more about it. So thank you for that idea. I should look into it.
Oh, no, my pleasure. My pleasure. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. You were an amazing guest, and this was a fantastic opportunity. And this was really just a great conversation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Great show.
Mine. Thank you, Ali.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.